Last year, 65% of all searches started on Amazon. Product searches on search engines was only 49%, right? So they've actually surpassed traditional search engines at this point in time. So at this point, it's like you have to be on there, right? The other big piece is 69% of searches are non-branded on Amazon. So it's also one of the biggest or one of the best new customer acquisition channels, in my opinion. Thus, it's like you can't sleep on it. Even from a branded protection standpoint, I've got brands that'll say, oh, I'll never sell on Amazon. But then I look up their branded volume and there's 20, 30, 100,000 searches a month. Like, well, if you're not going to cover your brand, like, I'll take your sales.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
I'm super excited to chat with Daniel Tejada today, who founded Straight Up Growth. He and I were actually just at the Roth conference recently, so that'll probably be about a week ago by the time this publishes. And it was fascinating to chat with a bunch of investors over there. But first, I'd love to start, Daniel, with you giving us the origin story for Straight Up Growth.
Oh, man, what a story it is, I like to say at this point. So I started doing Amazon ads in 2016, definitely before it was cool to do Amazon then, and it was barely a bookstore. In I guess 5 years, I'd sold over $1 billion worth of product on Amazon. I'd worked with a number of brands in all sorts of different categories. Figured definitely knew what I was doing, at least a little bit. Then I actually met my business partner. This was in November of 2019. February of 2020, right before COVID, I quit my job, started the business, and then COVID hit the next month, and I panicked, for lack of a better term, that I was like, oh man, I should have never quit my job. But here we go. 3 years later, we have 30 employees. We're doing a couple $1 million of rev a year. We've done, we did $500 million of sales on Amazon last year. So it's worked out luckily since then.
Congrats. Well, it's amazing because the data indicates that Amazon's become the e-commerce search engine of choice for consumers, right? And so how does that change the strategy for brands or manufacturers that sort of are forced to deal with Amazon?
Yeah, so it's like, I remember my first company, people used to say Amazon's a dirty word, right? Because back in the day, brands really just didn't want to go on it at the end of the day, but they have to, right? I remember talking to, one of the biggest battery brands in the world when I was at Quiver. And I remember our first year, we were trying so hard to get in touch with them, calling everyone we could, look, do you guys know you're missing out on this opportunity? They came in a year and a half later, and they were the ones that were knocking on our door at that point. And they're like, look, we need to get on there. We slept on Amazon. Amazon sells more batteries than we do now at that point. And this was at the point where this 2017. So just as Amazon's taking off, last year, 65% of all searches started on Amazon. Product searches on search engines was only 49%, right? So they've actually surpassed traditional search engines at this point in time. So at this point, it's like you have to be on there, right? The other big piece is 69% of searches are non-branded on Amazon. So it's also one of the biggest or one of the best new customer acquisition channels, in my opinion. Thus, it's like you can't sleep on it. Even from a branded protection standpoint, I've got brands that'll say, oh, I'll never sell on Amazon. But then I look up their branded volume and there's 20, 30, 100,000 searches a month. Like, well, if you're not going to cover your brand, I'll take your sales, all day. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you had any customers where Amazon decided to launch a basics or an in-house brand to compete with them?
No. So I've heard that argument where people get worried about they're going to take my customer data, right? And it's like, well, if you're a brand, have you ever lost to Kirkland, right? You still sell to Costco there. It's like my brands never really lose on that front. It's just that Amazon's going to be a generic low price point item, right? But doesn't mean you can, it just means that you may have to actually try a little harder, right? There, if Amazon comes to it. But at the end of the day, I've never had, and I'm not fearful of Amazon specifically taking a category, just because most of that information is already publicly available anyway. Like I can see anyone's sales on Amazon at any given time, right? It's just that I think sometimes people like to make an excuse when they lose to it, sometimes. But like if you're losing to Kirkland, you're probably a generic item in the first place anyway.
Right. Well, I mean, certainly a lot of brands and DTC companies that own their own products and want to distribute via Amazon have sort of a love-hate relationship with Amazon as a result of that dynamic. And I think part of it, if they're a vendor and Amazon actually buys from them, they get like two reasons to hate them. First of all, obviously the buyers at Amazon beat them up on price. Yep. And then once they're live in Amazon, a different team at Amazon comes to them to sell them sponsored listings. And like, wait a minute, I already gave you the rock bottom price, and now you're asking for more money. But is it sort of a healthy tension, or do you think it's unhealthy?
I mean, I'd say depends on the day, right? There. I mean, I think, look, in general, there's things that Amazon can do to improve, right? There and make the process a lot more streamlined and better for the sellers. However, for the most part, right, like it's still a platform where, like when you take all your costs out and things like that, it's not that much more expensive than what you're paying on your own Shopify. Your Shopify site doesn't also automatically generate millions and millions of searches every single month there, right? So it's like it's almost like if you combined Google and Shopify into one there, right? And there are definitely some costs there. The costs have gotten higher. Like trust me, like the Amazon seller services category by how they break out, how they make money. It's the first year that seller services surpassed advertising in terms of growth for revenue for the business, right? So they are definitely squeezing the nail a little bit here in regards to like starting to price some things out, but they still have an unbelievable customer acquisition tool right there. And that's really why you're making that deal in the first place. It's like, yes, it does hurt, but if you're doing it right, if you're focused on new to brand, it's going to be fruitful, right? Where it's not as advantageous as like, okay, I'm Amazon's cannibalizing my sales and I'm winning only on branded traffic, right? Then it's not as helpful because like those are customers that were going to buy from you guys anyway, right? And now you're giving Amazon a little bit more market share. But if you're using Amazon properly and you're winning on the non-branded, then it's still worth it, even if it makes you want to pull your hair out from time to time.
But one of the things that we used to hear from folks with regarding Amazon is obviously Amazon owns the customer relationship to a great extent, and there really weren't initially any significant
in the beginning.
Where you could communicate back with your Amazon customer, which they considered their Amazon customer, right? But they have started to roll out some tools now where, I wouldn't really call them quite CRM tools, but communication channels where you can actually retarget and remarket to your customers proactively. Do you feel like that's a move in the right direction?
I definitely do think it's helpful. So they've got it's called the customer engagement tool is what you're talking about, where you can like actually start to like reach out. There are certain things like with DSP or sponsored display, you can actually build custom Amazon audience segments. So you don't know who's in that segment specifically, but you can build like past purchasers of individual items. You can hit viewed but not purchased. So we're at least able to start doing the things that we want to do historically with that customer data there. And I think it's only going to get better and better over time, just because it has. I mean, everything I've seen with Amazon has gotten better for the most part. Sometimes they launch something and it doesn't make any sense, but then they figure out, how to make it work over time.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I have to remind brands that, especially if they're not, they haven't been around a tremendous amount of time, that their product listing page on Amazon may end up outranking them in Google for their own brand.
Yeah.
And so from an SEO perspective, you can look at that as either a negative or a positive, right? It's two bites at the apple, especially if competitors might also outrank. So you certainly have situations where for a brand, if a retailer ranks and that retailer actually also cross-links and cross-merchandises competing brands on the landing page, that's a potential competitive conquest situation. So, and of course it is in Amazon as well. So it is sort of a double-edged sword with regards to that, but you can't discount the SEO power of Amazon, especially for non-branded search. You could end up
Oh
ranking
yeah.
for
You know what? Yeah,
non-branded keywords.
if you own a high volume non-branded term on Amazon, sometimes I've seen Amazon do Google, like paid Google ads to like you're shopping keto or something, and then they do an Amazon Google ad, and then you're first in search there, right? So it's like now you're really winning twice off of ranking, in search, which is awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to talk a little bit more about like, down in the weeds when you're doing sponsored listings for clients. Obviously, you can do competitive conquest against the ASIN numbers. And have you found that to be something that works for everybody, or it's really more selective?
So definitely competitor conquesting should work for everybody, right? Now, some brands don't have to stretch as hard as others, I'll say, right? So one thing I like to use is something called like the worst product strategy. So you could target ASINs, for example, that have worse reviews than you, less reviews than you, or higher price points than you, right? And that's a great way to just like steal some traffic. Now, there's some broad ways you could do it. So like if you're actually in your search console and you're like going through product targeting, they do allow you to target by category. You can set refinements on there, so you can actually set a refining piece. But the other piece is to like follow up on the data, right? It's not just like, oh, I'm targeting these ASINs, that this category didn't work, right? Like ultimately you treat it just like search terms. So you want to set a click threshold, right? So depending on your price, maybe 35 to 50 clicks, per ASIN or per search term, right? It's like how you're going to do it. And then you just bid optimize according to your goals, right? So if you're below your ACoS target, great, let's start spending more on these ASINs. But actually, like competitor conquesting, in my opinion, is one of the most underutilized, but one of the ways that you can make almost any product work, right? It's just finding those brands can be hard, right? But if you're clever enough, you can find the brands to at least make attempts at.
Right. What's your philosophy, or the philosophy you educate clients on with regards to sort of going upper funnel, right? Going more and more into the category where it's not as tight of a fit, but it's still enough of a fit that you'd like to be on the consumer's radar.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm definitely a fan of that. If I can afford, like, I like to almost build up to it sometimes, right? So
Right.
typically what I like to do is own like the niche stuff that's directly related to what I do there. Then I'll try to like kind of move into some conquesting stuff just to give myself some extra volume. And then it's what I call it like associated keywords if I'm talking about it from like a search perspective. We also do a lot of DSP spend where we definitely go top funnel DSP within that. We're huge fans. It's just there's also different expectations, right? And that's the thing that needs to be set. With clients, like when we're running a full funnel strategy and I'm using DSP, my first attempt to get to someone, let's say I'm in market in a specific segment, is actually like I'm optimizing towards click-through rate and detail page view rate. I'm not optimizing towards return on ad spend for that initial pull. Now, we're not going to leave it there. We're going to set up a follow-up, a different custom creative on the DSP on like viewed but not purchased, right? And that is optimizing towards return on ad spend. So, but I have to set that expectation for the client, right? Where they're like, oh, no, let's turn off the top of funnel. Well, no, this top of funnel I know is working well because of XYZ, right? This traffic is why our retargeting just got so much better, right? Like the reason that ROAS jumped up isn't because, it just started, the people didn't change. It's that now we're getting them more involved in this process. So it's not for everyone, but it is something that can be powerful if you do it properly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You mentioned that competitive conquest was sort of underutilized by many Amazon marketers. Are there any other underused strategies you recommend marketers consider?
Yeah, that's a great one. I mean, I think on the basic front, one of the things I preach all the time is just advertising efficiency, right? Particularly for Amazon, right? Amazon gives you, a 7-day ad attribution window. There, they make it pretty easy to see. Like you literally know for a fact. This isn't like Facebook where you're like, now where you're like, maybe this is a sale, maybe not. Like, I don't know. Like we know for a fact that this is a sale on a click in this there. So as long as you are diligent about moving terms out, like I see a lot of the advertisers stick in research campaigns for too long. Like they'll spend on an auto campaign most of their money. And it's like, yeah, the auto campaign's doing well. But if you just took the winners out and and then just stop spending on the losers, all of a sudden your campaigns are flying right there. And so always keyword harvest, right? Always try and reduce your spend towards research campaigns, because it's reducing that wasted spend is like so basic, but a lot of people don't do it the way they should.
So probably nearly everybody who will be in Amazon for this year is in it already, but there may still be people showing up now to launch Amazon FBA campaigns.
Oh no, there are. Trust me, I'm talking to some brands that are they're still trying to get it.
When you're talking to those people, right? Obviously, a big concern to them is like I'm starting with like 0 reviews, right? I mean, and back in the day, there are ways of juicing things up fast.
Yeah.
Now, not so easy, right? So, how do you help somebody through that hump where they need to get reviews in there because that social proof ends up improving the conversion?
Great question. So I've got an item right now, like we're the number 1 item on the term keto. We started with 0 reviews. I've got 20,000 reviews on my item, right? And it's been 2 years. We didn't do anything black hat there, but we did a couple things that I think are fundamentally important. One is like sell a brand, don't sell a commodity item. So like, even though like this brand sells literally 2 items exclusively, right? It's but what we're selling, it's like a keto testing kit, right? So it's not anything fancy. It's just like a urine strip basically. But when you look at the listing, it's a brand, right? There we have an app that's tied to it. Like in the actual content itself, right? We talk about the brand and what it stands for. There we have unique selling points. There we do the same thing from a packaging level, and like really the idea behind it is customers are going to, 1, be more interested in repeat purchasing, but 2, they're more likely to actually take the time to give you feedback, right? If you build that brand. So that's one part. And then the other piece is non-branded customers, for whatever reason, leave reviews at like 3 times the rate that branded customers do. So really just winning on non-branded is what allowed us to see that review accelerate, right? Like it took me, what's it called? It probably took me in 3 months, I probably got 200 reviews, right? There. Then, as sales started to increase, all of a sudden I was doing 500 reviews every 3 months. Right now we're doing, a little over 1,000 reviews every 3 months, right? Because of like where we're at from a non-branded perspective. But none of it's black hat. It's just like, believe in the product, show people that it's a brand, not just a individual item, and then win on non-branded. Your conversion rates will shift. So not to say that if you're net new, it's super easy, right? Certain categories like supplements, very, very hard, right? Especially without reviews. However, if we move into, more obscure categories, you don't need to have as many reviews to get started. But your conversion rates will change, right? You may start at a 4% and then you're at a 7 and then you're at a 10. But you have to deal with what you got, right? And it's harder to do black hat stuff. So got to do what you got to do.
Has it been easier now that Amazon's rolled out the ability to communicate almost in a CRM type of a way? Like, did you do post-purchase follow-up?
I think it's a little easier. So, like, they've opened up Vine, for example. So Vine is like a good one because you're going to get some standard reviews there. What has helped is opening up targeting on past purchasers, right? Or purchasers of certain products. So, like, we've done really well launching items off of the first item, right? So the first item's the hardest, but like if you have an item, you can create and you have decent, large enough sales, right? To have an audience that's significant enough. Like we launched an item to be the number 1 new release on Amazon through like, without even doing a single dollar on sponsored products. We did a DSP ad on a product we'd already launched, past purchase or on past purchasers of a different product. And then all of a sudden we had 200 reviews like in a week and a half. It was awesome there. And that then helped me get the conversion rate I needed to compete on the higher volume terms and stuff.
Right. Yep. So it sounds like the choreography ends up being pretty important. Right?
Yeah, that's fair to say. I like that. Yeah, the choreography is really what it is. Because it's just a couple steps. It's a sequence, really. That's all it is. It's not a complicated sequence, but it's just doing the sequence.
But slightly off-topic question. Running a nonprofit, obviously, it was interesting to see Amazon Sunset Smile, which they gave everybody about 3 or 4 weeks warning on that, and they
saw that
on President's Day. What's your point of view on that? Do you think that was a smart strategic move on their part? Do you think?
I was surprised to see it. I was pretty surprised. I figured there has to be a reason why. So I'm assuming it's probably more bureaucratic. Maybe they're like putting dollars, or maybe they're like focusing more of their dollars towards specific charities, or maybe that's like falling under a different partner or whatever. Yeah, because I thought that was actually like always a great thing that they had on there. But I don't think that they'd like shut off the charitable stuff that they do, but maybe we'll see.
Well, they're just not democratizing it, right?
Yeah,
It used to
yeah,
be
I think that-
democratized, right? Everyone
Yeah.
could pick their own charity, and it was really more like the people felt like it was their giving, not Amazon's giving.
Right, right,
To the Smile Foundation,
right.
right?
Yeah.
And now they're going to do it from what I understand, in a more traditional way, which is here we are in the executive office. We'll decide which causes we want to put might behind, and that's where we'll put our might.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, it's I did like the democratized version of it, but you know, I don't think it's going to be the type of thing that will get like, I don't think people would leave, you know, Amazon because of it. Like they're not going to go to Walmart.com and start buying stuff there instead, but just something that, you know, not
I'm actually building a charity mall under my nonprofit, and we'll see if any people leave or not. So
that's a good idea.
We'll have Walmart and about 1,000 other merchants live by the end of the month.
That's actually pretty smart.
Sure. But you know, just curious, what has you excited about the next year? I mean, obviously, there's a potential recession looming on the horizon, and you know, the banks are failing left and right.
Seriously, yeah. If you get that conference and just like hearing like all these, like the bank failing at the same time, I'm like, wow, this is not great timing.
Yeah, exactly. So, but you know, what has you excited about the next year? You know, with your company roadmap or with just the ecosystem at large?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, we're still relatively bullish across the board. I mean, even from a company perspective, I expect to grow about 100% year over year, slightly less than last year, but still pretty significant growth there. With really good margins and things like that. So it shouldn't even be a stretch to get towards that. As a whole, like even from the economy perspective, it's like, I know everyone's talking recession, but it's like we've got a super resilient unemployment rate. It's been at like 3.4%. You know, it's like the lowest at 53 years that we're seeing right now. Inflation is slowing down, kind of. I don't know. That one's up for debate there. But people are still spending, right? Like in January, I had 4 brands with, you know, over 200% year over year growth, right? Like I posted a LinkedIn thing on like last Monday there, where it's like people are still spending, consumer spending is still up pretty significantly. You know, Amazon is still growing there. I think it's slowing down a tiny bit in terms of competitiveness, but like, you know, I'm pitching, talking to $1 trillion company right now. I'm talking to a multi-billion dollar company that's never sold on Amazon before. Like brands are still interested in getting in there. It has not plateaued in any way. In my opinion, we're still going to see more growth.
Right. I mean, we do a lot of SEM spending, and we haven't really seen a huge slowdown in search query volume on commerce terms. We have seen slowdowns in non-commerce related categories like mortgages and real estate,
which makes sense. And those are the industries that are slowing down too right now.
So it's interesting and so you've seen similar search query volumes at the generic level for.
Yeah, they're not going down. It's like, you know, at all right now, honestly. The only thing I'll say is I have certain brands that are more cautious. So some brands are pulling back more. Some brands are like paying attention to profitability for the first time, which is like stuff that they should have been. Like all of a sudden they're like, oh wait, we're not making money on this SKU on Amazon that we've been selling 100,000 a month on. And it's like, well, you probably should have known that, you know, to begin with, but that's okay.
How do you advise folks think about LTV on Amazon? Obviously on Shopify, it's a lot easier to understand the LTV.
It's a lot easier. Amazon, so you've been able to hack it for a while there. Amazon is opening up a lot more data this year. So there's like Amazon Marketing Cloud does give you some like really great insight there. Eventually you'll be able to do like search term level LTV, which will be pretty crazy. You could always get your LTV from your Amazon ad rep there. If you ask them to build this report, they can actually give you a true 12-month there. But we're huge believers in it, right? We work with a ton of consumable products. You know, consumables are the most competitive, right? There, but it's like, you know, if you're selling a vitamin on Amazon, right, you're selling it a $19.99, you know, average order value item, right, on the first sale, and your typical, you know, average starting CPCs, if you're net new, are $10 to $15, right? So it's like, good luck, even with a 50% conversion rate, you're not making money on sale one, right? You make money on the repeat sales and organic revenue on Amazon, like the non-branded organic. And so you have to have an LTV mindset when you're doing it. Like I know, okay, I'm going to sell this item for $19.99, but my average customer on a 12-month basis is going to spend $120 with me, right? I could break even. I'll spend $19.99 on every advertisement if I'm going to make that much money on the long end there.
Right. So yeah, the key is to be confident enough in your data that you're willing to invest.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, I'm super excited for you to have you on and have you share your wisdom about the Amazon Marketplace. What's the easiest way for people to find you? Your LinkedIn?
Yeah, they can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. Daniel Tejada can always reach out on our website, which is straightupgrowth.com. Always love chatting Amazon anytime.
Sounds good. Thanks so much. Appreciate having you on.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in the Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.